Sure, sure.
It's quite handy. I'm going to get started because I don't want to keep you for too long on this ridiculously hot day, Rob. But I was just going to begin by asking about this, when this idea came about. You know, we all started using Zoom quite early on into lockdown. I just wonder when that kind of brainwave came in, when you thought, hang on a minute, we could use this here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if you remember, but like right at the beginning of the lockdown, everyone on Twitter was saying like, oh, who's going to be the first person to make a Zoom movie, you know, and being kind of quite sarcastic about it. And it was a couple of months in and nobody had done it. So it got to a point where me and my friends, who were all actors and great kind of behind the scenes, you know, we basically, everyone I hang out with, because I'm boring, works in the film industry. And we were already sitting on a Zoom call, just, you know, doing Netflix parties and having Zoom happy hours. And we kind of thought like, well, why don't we give it a crack? You know, it's going to be one of these things where if the movie's shit, we'll get a free pass anyway, because we made it under lockdown conditions. And, you know, and if it's good, then great. But either way, it'll be fun to make it.
Yeah. Do you think that in some ways, because I imagine with movie making, the more time people have, the more they scrutinize. But obviously you had to kind of do this and get it out really quickly. Do you think actually that was quite beneficial? Because it didn't really allow you the time to kind of overthink anything.
I think that's exactly it. And we just, our kind of, the whole aim of this was to make a movie that we would want to watch in lockdown. You know, like, I don't know about you, but when lockdown started, I thought that I was going to read all the books that I've been putting off. I thought that I was going to get through my Ingmar Bergman box set, but instead I just watched all the Halloween movies. So really, we just all got together. We put our heads together and said, well, what's the movie that we'd want to watch that's just going to be fun, that's going to be a roller coaster ride, that's not going to be too morbid? You know, we really wanted to make sure this wasn't a pandemic movie. This was a lockdown movie. It's a movie about people being in this current situation that we were all in. And yeah, and I mean, I've forgotten the question. I'm just rambling now, but that was the intention, to make something fun.
Yeah, because I know it's funny. I was the same. I think at the beginning of lockdown, I actually made a list of in my notes on my phone, things I wanted to achieve in lockdown. I had things like learn the piano and learn French. I mean, I haven't even got a piano. I haven't even taken that first step. But no, but do you think? Because I watched it last night, and it felt like you guys have captured this moment, and this is a period of time that we're never going to forget, any of us. I mean, at the moment, I don't think we quite realise. I mean, I watched Mad Men from start to finish. I did do that in lockdown.
That's something.
Yeah, and I remember now, if I see a clip from Mad Men, I already get this kind of weird feeling inside the kind of gut of my stomach of kind of like nostalgia or kind of nerve. I can't really explain it. And you've created something that is kind of part of this period, and it's gonna now every time I see Host, it's gonna take me back to this time in my life. I mean, did you kind of take that? Was that something that you kind of realized when you were making it, that you had captured actually something quite unique and quite special, that a film that really could be quite defining in some ways to this period of time?
We had no real expectations for this movie at all. Like really just what we wanted to do was make something that could be out in time for people to enjoy it while they're still in the same situation as the characters. And we thought that might be quite cathartic. We thought that might be quite fun. I don't think any of us ever really assumed that this movie would travel as much as it has, and how it's entered the mainstream has been amazing. You know, making it for a horror specific site like Shudder, we thought that our audience would be just within the horror community, and maybe it wouldn't kind of enter the kind of mainstream discourse. So we never really had any kind of lofty aspirations for it. It was really just about how can we scare the audience moment to moment using what we have available, which is whatever we've got in the house. And you know, I think, you know, and I've said this before, but it bears repeating. Like as a horror filmmaker, all you're looking to do really is to come up with an idea and execute it in a way that means that people take it home with them. You know, you're always trying to make a movie that people are thinking about when they turn off their bedside lamp. And it's just a gift to be given a situation where every I say it's a gift. I mean, that's morbid, obviously, but as a filmmaker, there's so much you can do when everyone in the world is in the same situation, stuck at home, with the same frame of reference, the same video conferencing they use, the same set of aggravations. And there's just so much you can build on as a horror filmmaker. So we really saw the potential there.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because you're right. I've done Zoom calls with, you know, people like Richard E. Grant or Spike Lee, for example, over this period, which makes you think that suddenly we've all got. And I remember when like Richard E. Grant was signing in, there was that moment of like not connecting to audio and stuff. And you are right, we've suddenly got this thing that connects everyone. Which is quite interesting. And
that was really the kind of like breakthrough moment when we were prepping this. What we thought was going to be a major drawback, not being able to be in the same room as everyone else. Actually, what it did is it opened up the whole world to us. Anyone with an internet connection could come and help us out. If we needed somebody to do a crazy stunt, if we could find someone and they were game to film it on their iPhone, we could put it in the movie by the next day.
But you mentioned before about the kind of how it's entered into the mainstream, and obviously you guys worked incredibly hard, and I'm sure you're incredibly proud of what you've achieved, but are you still surprised by the reaction? I mean, and that's not to belittle the movie in any way, shape or form.
No.
It's been so well received, and like you said, you know, interviews in The Guardian, and then in American publications.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
The New York Times still blows my mind, and it's just like lovely that people have been taking this movie seriously and taking it in the spirit in which it was made. I think there's a long tradition of horror movies being kind of misrepresented in criticism, and I think a lot of time journalists will go into a horror movie kind of in bad faith, or they won't go in taking it on the terms that it was meant to be enjoyed. You know, I love horror movies from the highest of the highbrow to the lowest trash you can imagine, and I think there's always something you can find in a movie if you engage with it as it was intended. And I think this was always meant to be a fun roller coaster ride of a horror movie, and the fact that people have enjoyed it as such, also seen, you know, also kind of taking it seriously enough to read into whatever subtext is there and talk about it as this little, you know, encapsulation of what's going on right now. It's kind of amazing, because all we thought we had when we put it on Shudder was a fun hour. You know, that's all we thought we had. We knew that it was an easy watch, and yeah, so it's amazing that people have been taking it with such seriousness.
Yeah, I was interested, wondering too about because I mean, as a horror filmmaker, like obviously you'll know this already, but you have to kind of abide by some of the tropes of the genre and play by the rules of it. But at the same time, you're kind of playing by the rules of the genre in a new landscape of a kind of a new setup which has got no rules, because no one's ever made a Zoom one before. So I was wondering about that balance between playing by the rules in a kind of new environment where there haven't been rules set yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's when we set out to do this, we knew that like the gimmick, the way that this would be sold is as a Zoom horror movie set during lockdown. So we had this kind of new approach to the material, and so we knew that what we were doing within that couldn't be too we had to work within a familiar framework, because the movie itself was in a new format that people would be getting to grips with. So we wanted this kind of mixture of old and new, which is why we went for the seance as being the kind of central thing that kicks off our haunting. It's, you know, it's as old as the ghost story, the idea of a group of friends getting together and doing a seance that goes wrong. And, you know, I think we thought, you know, we wanted to play around with some very specific Zoom features like the looped background and things like that. But also we just wanted it to play as a fun haunted house movie, which is something, you know, it's been a bucket list thing of mine to do a really, really fun haunted house movie. So just being able to throw in those kind of slightly, like you say, slightly tropey, but there's nothing wrong with a trope if you do it in a way that's slightly unexpected. I think you can have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, but the one thing you did lose just by proxy of doing it on Zoom is kind of music. Because music can be such a huge part of the kind of horror experience, but obviously in this instance, in a sort of similar way to, I guess, like Blair Witch, you can't really implement music because it takes away, detracts from the realism. So I just wondered about navigating your way around the kind of tropes of the genre, but losing one of its kind of key components, which I have to say I didn't miss from the movie at all. But.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. One thing that me and Brenna Rangat, the editor, did is when we were putting together the assembly, we actually did score it. We put on music over the scare scenes, and we put on horror stings, and, you know, for the jump scares, and then we delivered that to our sound designer Callum Sample, with the instruction that he should kind of take the spirit of the music, but find ways of using distortion or ambience and things that could be justified through the Zoom call kind of lead us through the scene. So, you know, I think what music does really well is it shapes a scene, and it kind of guides an audience through their, you know, it takes them on a journey through the scene. And it was important to know what those beats were, so that then we could do away with them and see what we needed.
Yeah. This might sound like a silly question, because I don't actually know how it all works, but did you need permission from like Zoom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big one. I don't think I would have done it if Zoom had said no. But we went to them, you know, with cards on the table. We want to kill a bunch of people on your platform, and they were totally game, and they shared a packet full of all their assets, so we could kind of replicate the Zoom layout, because, you know, we didn't do it by recording the screen. We built the whole Zoom interface ourselves, and you know, they really helped us by giving us the assets and everything we'd need to piece that together. Because it's the thing, it's so it had to capture this feeling, being on a Zoom call, and the you know, the way that it lags and the way that the audio sounds. It had to be really specific to Zoom for it to work. So yeah, that was essential. That was the first door we knocked on.
Were there any kind of, I guess the whole point to it was that, you know, with Zoom, part of the kind of charm and the things that we can relate to are the little maybe flaws, you know, the connecting,
yeah,
taking a while, the buffering, stuff like that. Obviously, this was all done online. I was just wondering if there were any kind of accidental moments where things buffered or things went slightly wrong, but you kind of went with it because it kind of in some ways encapsulated the point to kind of Zoom, or if this was much more kind of a slickly run operation.
Well, we didn't actually use any Zoom footage in the movie. What we did is we got all the actors' iPhones, and we attached the iPhone behind the laptop with the camera pointing out just above the laptop. So I was able to be on Zoom, monitor the shots they were getting. You know, they acted it out on a Zoom call, but we knew we had these separate shots that weren't where there was no interference from the internet. So every single lag you see in the movie is something that we've added for pacing reasons or whatever. But what I will say is because the cast were basically being one-person film crews, there were lots of things that came out of them not being the most technical people that actually added to the final product. Like there's a shot in the movie that I love where Emma is under the sheets and she hears a noise and she pauses and only her eye is visible through the crack in a sheet. And on the Zoom call, I was seeing a conventional shot, but she'd managed to mount the iPhone way too high on her laptop. And she was, you know, which is why for a lot of the movie, she's framed like this, because she just couldn't figure out how to mount her iPhone. So we got this amazing shot that was totally by accident, but is actually probably the most iconic shot in the movie.
How was it sort of directing from afar? I mean, I guess so much of directing is being present, isn't it? And being there. How did it feel and to do it kind of from behind a computer screen? Was that, I mean, I'm assuming obviously that was the first time you've had to do it that way, and probably maybe the last, but was it, how did you find that kind of experience?
I thought it was really, I feel so kind of re-energized after doing this movie, and I feel like I learned so many things that I'm going to take on to whatever I do next, whether that's in the real world or still in my bedroom. But the thing that was great about it is, just like you say, I felt like I was very present day by day. We had we had a scriptment. We didn't have a script. We had a 17-page kind of document with a few bullet points. So I'd arrive on Zoom, first thing in the morning with the cast, and we'd have 3 bullet points for the scene. And then I'd have to, kind of work through the scene with them. We'd have to all pitch in ideas, and we'd have to rehearse until we found the shape of the scene. So we were kind of making the movie moment by moment, day by day. And that was so, it's scary, but it's really fun as well. And it's kind of like, once you get down to it, it's kind of not that different. I feel like if you're a director that's worth your salt, you should be able to communicate what you want in quite a concise way, and you should be able to do it with words rather than having to get in and be too demonstrative. I think it I think if anything, it kind of sharpened my ability to do that. So it was a really good practice.
Were there I was wondering too, because obviously that was all remote when it was shot, but have you guys had the chance yet to all meet up and have a drink or just watch the film together since the kind of a been eased?
Yeah, we did a rap party in Greenwich Park on Sunday, a socially distanced rap party, which is great because it's the first time that I'd met Teddy. I'd never met Teddy before. Everyone else was in our original friend group, but I needed without spoiling what happens to Teddy, I needed somebody who could do those things. And so we were very lucky to find Teddy, who's stunt certified and an incredible actor, and was able to come into the group and slot into that dynamic so easily. But there are people who who've been working really closely on this movie for the past few months who still haven't met each other. Jed Shepherd and Gemma Hurley, the two other writers, have never met each other still to this day.
Yeah, it must have been amazing to see each other, because I guess you've all kind of experienced this thing together, but not actually been able to experience it together. So it must have been so cool to kind of just meet up and share it almost for the first time, I guess, in some ways.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's really lovely. It's like you say, I think years from now, when we look back on lockdown, making this movie together, making this movie with our friends, that's going to be the experience we remember. And even if Shudder saw the movie and said, we're not going to release this, it would have been worth it, because the experience was so fun. And so surreal as well, releasing it while we're still, I suppose we're not 100% locked down right now, but still in this situation, it still feels very surreal. It's not like we had a premiere. It's not like we all got together and had a red carpet or anything like that. It was a case of, at the start of lockdown, we were on Zoom together. Then we were making a movie on Zoom together. Then we released the film on Zoom together, and we're still on Zoom together. It feels slightly unreal.
I was kind of because you've obviously done some great shorts before as well, but so this is obviously the first feature-length film, but obviously it's still under an hour. Just wondering if in your do you personally, because I saw it and it felt to me just like a feature-length movie. It felt no different if I watched a film that was 90 or 100 minutes, as far as I know. But I'm just wondering about the whole notion of like what makes a feature-length movie. But in your eyes, as a filmmaker, does the films under an hour qualify in that bracket, or do we even need to get to the table? Yeah,
I'd say it's a feature. I mean, according to the Academy, it's a feature. That's what we went by. But I mean, it could have been less. I mean, the deal we made with Shudder is that it had to be over 30 minutes, because I honestly wasn't sure how much good material we'd be able to get out of shooting this way. When we went into it, there was really no guarantee that it was going to work. So short, feature, TV special, we threw all these words around. I think it feels like a feature, and I think hopefully it's got the same shape as a feature, and it's satisfying in the same way. But at the same time, I think an hour-long movie can do things that a 90-minute movie can't. I feel like one of the things that feels fresh about Host, and that I really enjoyed, is that we weren't trying to impose a kind of a feature film structure onto our movie. The movie has a kind of a solid escalation, but it's not like we're trying to resolve these huge character arcs. It's not like we're trying to have the characters come to terms with a great big backstory. We're allowed to just be in the moment with these characters. And really, in terms of character development, they move like inches, millimeters, and that's fine for an hour-long movie. I feel like sometimes when you're making longer movies, you get stuck into, you can look at your watch, you can time it on your watch and say, oh, I know exactly where I'm at, and I know exactly when the redemption's going to come. And and it's very easy to fall into those tropes. Whereas an hour long movie can be whatever the movie tells you it is.
And so my final question really was, I mean, I've been following your career for a few years, and you've done some really great stuff, but this film feels like a bit of, not, I don't want to use the word breakthrough, that feels wrong, but like you said, the thing has really gone into the kind of mainstream, like New York Times, Guardian. I just think about kind of what happens next for you. I mean, has that attention on Host turned into sort of any new dialogue with yourself and people? Or do you feel like this could be the sort of stepping stone that leads on to the next few projects in your career?
Well, I hope so. I mean, it's certainly going to make things easier. Off the back of those short films, I mean, we've sold and have been developing a number of horror movies. We just announced one a few weeks ago that we're me and Jed Shepherd are doing with Sam Raimi producing, which I'm going to direct. Which actually has been, it's lovely that got announced around the same time. But actually, we've been developing that for a few months. But it's really nice. It's a really nice feeling if I'm going to go and do that movie with Sam Raimi next year, that I've been able to kind of test drive making a feature-length horror movie during lockdown. Because it's very easy to just spend your life developing things, and there's always a worry that you're going to step foot on set and not know quite what to do. And that was my worry during lockdown, is that I just kind of slightly lose my edge by sitting around, and I like to work. I like to keep pushing. So hopefully Host is going to move those projects along faster, and hopefully they're going to be better for me having made Host.
So just very quickly, I mean, Sam Raimi, that's pretty exciting, isn't it?
It's
I mean,
nuts.
You must have
it's
been
nuts.
over the moon when that news came in.
It's honestly, he's my absolute hero. Evil Dead 2 is still the movie that it's my favorite movie. It's the movie that I've watched more than any other movie. It's the movie that inspired me to get into films in the first place. So to be sitting across the table from Sam Raimi, throwing ideas around, and for him to talk to me like a peer is it's a kind of pinch me moment, but it's been really fun so far, and I've learned so much. I mean, I think there's a lot of Sam in Host, and having worked with him for the past few months, I think a lot of what he's taught me and what I've taken from him ended up in the movie.
Well, it's fully deserved. I think your work's great, and I just can't wait
to
see what you and Sam have got up your sleeve. It's so exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey